And she's all I've ever dreamed of, except for just one thing. She thinks I'm still God's gift to women. God's gift to women. How I wish she'd understand that her legendary lover is an ordinary man. For she'll be home any minute, Lord. Duty calls again. Here I go, being God's gift to women.
Honey, I'm home.
Be right there, dear. Now I'm counting on Viagra and my multivitamin just to prove I'm still God's gift to women.
You are listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
Where'd the old town go? They moved it all north of here in a shopping mall. Where'd the old town go? Did my hometown get old, or just me? Did all my friends get old, or just me? Are they all gonna have to be told, or just me?
Good morning and welcome to Old Town Cleveland here on WOOP FM 99.9, or you can go to the internet at www.woopfm.com. You can call us here at 614-5553. My lovely co-host, my wife Debbie Moore, tell us what's going on today.
Good morning, Ron. This is September the 7th. It seems like we were just here yesterday. This week has passed by very quickly. We've got a couple fellas in here, and we're going to talk about Polk County this morning. We've got Joe Fetzer and John Miles in, and we're going to just talk about anything that comes across our minds, but we're going to spend a lot of time maybe talking about the Ocoee Dam number 1 and the area up there in Polk County.
I want to hear about the corn maze, too, before we leave today.
And
I'm sure you wouldn't
Joe
mind talking
has
about
a
that.
little bit.
lost.
It
I
doesn't
want
take
you
much
just tell
to-
me about it.
Okay.
If Ron ever wanted to lose me, he'd just take me to Hamilton Place Mall and turn me around 2 or 3 times and just leave, because I can never find my way in and around that place. Ron, I just read something here online that was really interesting. I think some of our listeners would be interested in, is that, of course, we all know that the 150th anniversary of the Battle of Chickamauga and the battles for Chattanooga are in full swing right now. But they're offering some double-decker bus tours through the park, narrated tours with a guide, September 16th through 22nd. And I just know that there's 4 buses a day, and it's about an hour long, and I'm sure it has a cost, but my computer was working too slow, and I couldn't figure that out this morning. And our own Cowpea Festival will be next weekend, September the 14th. And also something that we highly recommend to folks are the free polo matches down at Bendabout Farms are coming up September 13th and 14th and September 27th and 28th. And if your family has not been to a polo match, you need to get down there. They built a whole bunch of new bleachers, although I do recommend that you, if you want to sit in your own chair, you can take it and sit there behind the line.
Okay.
There's also the Bradley County Emergency Medical Services out at Oak Grove School this morning from 10 to noon, and they're doing some Zumba and some other things to raise some money for Cindy Hensley, and I hope you guys will go out and support that.
Right, and I think Pro plays tonight up at down at Saudi Daisy. I don't know if it's in Saudi or in Daisy.
It's in Saudi.
Okay, it's
on
in
Dayton
Saudi.
Pike.
Dayton Pike. What's the name of the place?
The
there?
Tavern.
The Tavern. Okay.
And they'll be playing down there at 9:30, and you guys go down and visit Fro and
the Convertibles.
Convertibles,
Okay.
and our good friends over at Jackson's.
Joe and John, how you doing today?
Just fine.
Doing great.
Great. I've known John for many years. Joe, it's good to meet you. And
Yes, sir.
and I think we're We're going to try to talk a little bit about some of the areas of Polk County. We're going to talk a little bit about Ocoee Dam #1 there. I think is one of the main subjects we want to talk about. And
But
Joe,
you know how this show goes. We just talk about whatever we want.
Joe, lead us off. What do you want to tell us about the dam over there?
Well, the dam has already celebrated 100 years of generation, and actually what a lot of people don't realize is that as far as large central station hydroelectricity in Tennessee, that's where it started in January of 1912.
Right.
It was an amazing feat for that time, wasn't it,
think
Joe?
was 20.
Absolutely amazing. And the towers that are there where the electricity, there were 6 lines went to Chattanooga. There were 3 lines went toward Knoxville. Those original towers are, best I can tell, the original. There's other poles are replaced, but that's where it started. That's where it still comes from. And it's quite an amazing thing. And on the Hamilton Bank building in Chattanooga, there were 5-foot-high letters Ocoee whenever they first threw the switch. A certain Miss Lockett threw the switch.
We've
I
tried
have
to find the
searched and
picture of
searched
that.
for the picture of that. I'm sure there's one around. Matter of fact, I think I remember seeing one, but I don't know where I saw it. Wouldn't that be amazing? And they were just kind of sitting there too. I understand this too, that they were just kind of sitting there waiting for the last power pole to be put up and hooked up, and then they flipped the switch and turned the power on.
You know, the interesting thing I found out about all that was that the not only did they didn't have an easement, they actually bought the land that those towers and poles, and even still in Cleveland today, there is right-of-ways, or not right-of-ways, but property owned by what was the Tennessee Electric Power Company. And they just didn't have easements. I thought that was interesting. And now today they just get an easement from you, but they actually own the property where all those went. So I think that's pretty amazing from there to Chattanooga.
Those deeds on the dam itself went back to the Union Improvement Company, and then it became the Eastern Tennessee Power Company during construction, and it was the Tennessee Power Company the day it went into operation, and then later the TVA acquired the property and has operated it since. So we still have electricity. We've gone all the way from, of course, they had some small steam-powered generators way back then, but electricity came to the whole area, extended area, and now then we go all the way to the fiber optics. All these things would not be possible had we not had electricity, and it's neat that it originated with such a sustainable source, and it's amazing. It was I haven't been able to exactly determine, but some 4 or 5 years after that they had a dry year, and during that dry year, while they decided they had to do something, so they some point in time there they built a steam plant. And that steam plant, my grandfather's brother was I understand, the superintendent over it, and they would start to generate. They go out in the country and they tell everybody that they needed workers. So about 100 men would come, and they would assign times and generate power. Now, when I was a youngster, I believe it was 1957. Of course, it was years before that the generation ceased there in the steam plant. All the other facilities that had come online, it wasn't needed. But I can remember that the old smokestack, about 57, I think it was, came home from school one evening and they'd blown that thing down.
Doc German talks about riding a motorcycle up there just to see them take it down. Well, that's really interesting, and I think sometimes too folks go, well, that dam can't be that old because TVA's not that old. Well, news for them is that dam was there in 1912 and generating power.
Actually, some of the property started being acquired. I can't remember whether it's 1908 or 9,
like that.
And the construction of the dam is quite interesting. What little history I know of it, they were in a race. You see, with Hales Bar, they wanted to be the first, and so being in that race, those people back then didn't have all the resources we have, like radio and things today. They just pulled pranks on each other, and they were in a race, but they took the time to stick somebody's boots in that concrete, and they had to take about a half a day and wait and account for everyone. But they used what they called a cyclopean structure, which was simply to dump some big rock in it. We'll talk later about the refurbishing of the dam, re-strengthening of the dam. But that's how it was originally constructed. And they had a rock quarry on the other side of the river. They intended to get sand out of the island and build a railroad bridge in there. But the sand was too fine, so they weren't able to get sand out of there. But they had the limestone, and they had a huge rock crusher and cement plant, and they weren't powered by electricity. They were powered by steam, because steam was so important then. And I've seen a picture, and Debbie, you may know more, but it seemed like there was 6 or 7 smokestacks coming out of that. That's how huge this steam plant was, and it powered those 3 things. I say 3 things: the rock crusher and the cement plant, but also the stiff-legged derricks. Now, what's a stiff-legged derrick, Debbie?
I've seen, there's a picture of it right up here on the screen.
Okay.
I don't know. You explain that to me.
Well,
I mean, I think it's a fascinating thing that these guys were able to do what they did with mules and picks and axes and a little bit of steam power.
well, they had a determination, obviously, and they also had a realization that it could be done if they would just go at it. And the stiff-legged derricks were basically cranes with the steam powering the winches at the bottom. And we interviewed Mr. Bill Poston one time. He was later an operator there at the dam, but he was roughly 9 or 10 years old whenever the dam was being constructed, and whenever it was filled, he was about 9 or 10 years old. And he lived somewhere in the Silco Inlet area. And I asked Mr. Poston about those trees that were in the stiff-legged derricks, and he looked at me kind of funny, and he said, "Poles," said them, or trees, said them was poles, said great big trees, said 135 feet tall. And you think about it, the height of the dam, they probably had to be that high. Mr. Poston was a great character, man.
Do you recall people talking about when they got the dam almost finished, there was a big hole?
No, I don't recall that one.
Well, I read about it, and they said that when the construction got almost finished, a hole appeared at the base of the dam there, and they put, I can't tell you how many, boxcar loads of rock and cement and all kinds of stuff in there, and finally filled it up, and they thought it would be safe to go ahead and proceed. I believe that might
Apparently
be in.
it worked.
I believe that might be in that little orange book, The Rebirth of Parksville.
Another thing is that, if I'm not mistaken, from the time they started, it took them 18 months to build.
Less
the
than
dam.
that, I think.
It did take.
It was approximately in that area, because in the summer of 1911, there must have been at least 1,500 people living in the Parksville area there, very adjacent, and a lot of them were foreign workers that helped construct. And in the summer of 1911, it was such an awesome thing that there were a train car load of businessmen that came from Knoxville, Tennessee, just to see the building of the big concrete dam. And that's what they called it, the big concrete dam.
The big concrete dam, because that was such an unusual thing at that time. For folks who are interested in this, The Rebirth of Parksville was written by Gertrude Matlock, and you can pick up this little book down at the Museum Center, and it's a very interesting viewpoint from a woman whose husband worked there, who happens to be, and I believe she may have even lived at the original Caney Creek. And it's been a long time since I read the book, but it's got lots of good pictures in it, and it shows the building of all the dams up there. I think the amazing thing is the folks said, "Hey, look, we can dam this up and make a dam and make electricity." And before they even got that on its way, they said, "Now, if we'll put a flume line 5 miles up the river here, we can get electricity again." And then they started number 3, so they were really visionary, I think.
I think building that dam in 18 months, I don't think you can get the permits anymore that fast, can you? Yeah. Or you can't get the plans and the financing, and 10 years from now we would break ground. I think it's like the road going the road they're talking about going across the mountain up into Copper Hill, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, they've talked about that through 6 governors now, or and if they was to let the contract today, it'd be 10 years before the first car ever drove over it. So it'll be a long time before that road, if it ever gets built, or I don't think it's ever going to get built now. But the cost.
So, Joe, how long's your family been up there?
Well, since back in at least before the mid 1800s, they settled in the Cookson Creek area, which is just very close to the Parksville area.
Well, my family's the Watsons and the Baines.
Well,
Those are
you've
Cookson
got
Creek
real
folks.
roots in there too.
Yeah. Matter of fact, I think my great-grandparents moved down to Tunnel Hill, down on Tunnel Hill Road here in Bradley County when the lake was built. Apparently, they lost
Your
their homestead.
family was the Watsons and
The
who?
Baines.
Baines. Yeah. My mother was born in 1905 there on Indian Creek,
Mm-hmm.
the Reimers, and so they never had much money in their pocket till they bought their property to back the lake up.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, you could starve to death being a farmer in those days, because land, if you weren't actually activating it and using it the best and knew what you were doing, you could just starve to death working yourself to death.
And up in that area, you were just trying to farm the side of those ridges. It wasn't
They
much-
discovered very fast that corn could turn into moonshine, and that was a little bit better cash crop than corn.
But you think about it, Debbie, what was there before Ocoee No. 1 Dam was there?
The Cherokees
much,
had a
is
meal there.
Well,
I mean,
well there
yeah.
was the Parks Brothers
Meal.
Meal.
Right.
Mhm.
And as my understanding, it was somewhere about 1853 or something, whenever the Copper Road was built. I may be incorrect, but at least it went way back. It was an older structure. There's a picture of it whenever they first started building the dam, that it was there, and may have been used some during the construction of the dam. It was a 3-story facility, and the corn that was ground, because those farmers grew corn, and I still love to grow corn. It's obvious doing the corn maze and being a farmer, lifetime farmer. Corn is still an important crop, but it was the important crop to those folks because of cornmeal. That was a real
Absolutely.
staple in their diet, and then it fed the cows. And cornmeal and or cornbread and milk is just about a balanced ration for
There
for a
you
human.
go. There you go.
Debbie?
Buttermilk's even better. Yes, John.
Where did you get most of your pictures for the?
Well, Ron and I and David Swafford went down to the Georgia Archives, and
The
they
National
have,
Archives.
the National Archives, and they have those negatives refrigerated.
Well,
And you really have to call ahead. You call ahead and you tell them what you're studying, and you ask them to thaw out the negatives. They have to let them defrost in a certain way. They're not frozen. They're refrigerated to preserve them. And they'll bring them out, and they have a machine there that you can view them on, and then you can make a copy if you wish.
We also
We had some very generous people, too, that had everybody that we interviewed for Caney Creek had 3 pictures.
sure.
And this person had 3 different pictures. I couldn't believe it. And 3 different pictures and 3 different pictures. And that's how we got our
Doc
picture.
German, Buddy German.
Buddy had been, Buddy was deaf from his mom having German measles. And he was a historian. Doc's a historian, but Buddy really was a historian. He collected all kinds of things, and he worked in the newspaper business for decades, and he would copy every picture that came through. And the family, Buddy passed before I ever started this project, and the family just opened up everything and said, we'd love to tell our story.
Yeah.
Let us help you. And we have amazing pictures from them.
Also at the National Archive is all the records of the Tennessee Electric Power Company and TVA purchase. So they went
So
through.
you
and
know all the
so
salaries,
the
you know who worked
salaries,
there.
wherever
Wow.
pole was, everything that the TEA owned, TVA, and you can read the entire records. And we spent an entire day looking through those records, and you found the we talked about Doc German, his dad Lawrence German. We found out how much he made and that.
Yeah.
Talking about the mill on an ad that the Tennessee Electric Power Company made when they was going to turn on power January. They said January.
Yeah.
They had a picture of the old Parks Mill, and underneath it said there's going to be 25,000 horsepower.
Wow.
I think that was what it said on the ad, and we've got a copy of the ad. Matter of fact, in the documentary, that
Well, they were actually using the wheel there on the mill to generate electric power to have lights inside the mill.
I think they used
1909.
They used the mill as an office too when they
Yes.
first started.
Well, they used it as an office, and it was used as the commissary. So the building was moved and used there, and then I've been told that it was moved again and used up at Caney Creek. But I have no proof
And
of that.
something that I think, if everybody talk about the Copper Road, we think of what 64 going around there is now. That was not the road that was the Copper.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, because you have to remember the river wasn't as big or as wide as it is.
Well, Joe,
toward the
where do
lake
you
area.
think the old Copper Road was?
The old Copper Road, some think that there's only traces of it up at the Whitewater Center, but that simply is not the case as far as the basics of the old Copper Road goes, because John the Reimer Ford, some of your family and my family, and we haven't traced our ancestry back enough, but it's highly likely that we're related. But the Reimer Ford, the Reimers that eventually came on and done Magic Shelf here in Cleveland, were some of those folks. The Reimer Ford is there on the farm next to the corn maze, and it's the wider part in the river. And the old Copper Road came down basically down the river, and of course when you built the reservoir, the road was covered over. So there's pictures of a guest house up above the very beautiful overlook there at the top of Ocoee
Right.
Number 1 Dam.
Right.
That confirms in my mind, and most of the history that I know of the Ocoee area there came about because of my dad's sister, and she was very much into history. And I was got a contract carrying out a model of the test flume that they built before they built number 2. And there was an old railroad bridge there, which is still there. And I used to walk that when I was a youngster and go in there to feed cows. And in the wintertime, sometimes it'd have ice on it, and there were 3 2x4s, and sometimes it'd get down to 1. So I was quite interested in that old railroad bridge. And when I found out more and more, I eventually learned that old railroad bridge was the start of the building of the entire Ocoee system. And I went back and confirmed that with Stanley Elrod, who was an operator there. And if that were the case, and his father was, I believe, engineer on the train. We talked about the train coming in there. They didn't have the roads. They didn't have the bridges that could carry the heavy stuff needed to construct the dam, so they built the railroad.
All the way down to Ocoee?
Down below Ocoee, it's approximately a 6-mile railroad that was in there that's no longer exists, but much of the property has actually on the railroad a right-of-way. There's some of it has been sold, but by the TVA. But most of it is there. At least in reality, the bed is there. And
Joe, do you remember the rails actually being there?
I absolutely remember the rails. They were torn out the year I went to college in 1970. Of course, they weren't in operation in my lifetime, but I absolutely remember the railroad. And but Stanley, getting back to Stanley Elrod, his father being the engineer on the train, Stanley pondered that very much, and then he said it's got to be, because the older bridge was exactly the same grade as the bridge that's there now. And the best I've been able to determine, the only difference in the original bridge, which was a wooden structure, is that whenever they built the steam plant, apparently they came in and constructed what you see there now. And I know when they were rebuilding the dam in the late 70s, I can remember a gentleman talking about driving a fuel truck across it. They put 12 by 12 timbers, and you know, it's still quite sturdy. It endured the flood in 1990. I saw it, actually was on the end of it just before the ground was already cracking, where the water was about to break away the end of it, the abutment, but the bridge was stood it, and roughly close to 25 feet above a normal flow of upper flow of water.
Now
So
that house
this-
up on the hill there, where the
guest
dam was built,
house.
who owned that house, or what was that
Tennessee
up there?
Power owned
Was
it.
that
I would
Tennessee-
assume that Tennessee Power Company owned that. It was a guest house, and I've never been able to determine exactly where, and I know a lot of people know exactly where the hotel was, but you were talking about 64 Highway and it not existing. My father, when he was a youngster, he was born in 26, he used to carry milk to Parksville up a little trail where 64 is now. Before you get to Welcome Valley Road on up to Parksville, there was a little trail. And my Aunt Blanche, Daddy's sister, talked about there might have been a little trail coming down the river on adjacent to the lake. But the traffic, as I understand it, you know, when you were going into the Caney Creek Village, it was like the end of the world, you know. And
Well, you heard our people on the video saying it was nothing more than a pig trail.
well, they
Yeah.
tell me that everything was, you know, pretty peaceful there, but there wasn't you know, any enforcement or anything to speak of, and of course I've never been across the Kimsey Highway, but apparently the traffic crossed the Kimsey Highway and then they came on into number 2, so there couldn't have been, you know, a road to speak of along through that section, and there definitely was not the road that was built in that was there in 1912 crossed a bridge there at the Ocoee River, which was just a little bit upstream and diagonal to the present bridge, and it was named after my great-grandfather, Harfetzer, built, as I understand it, in 1912, and about the same time, you know, as the dam. But that road, when you get almost around the curve just past the bridge, it turned to the left and it went to Benton. And when Welcome Valley Road was built, it was called the New Road to Benton. So,
Joe, you know what I'm getting ready to say. You need to be writing all this down, buddy.
John, now, where did your family lived? Where from the dam?
They were on Indian Creek.
Indian Creek. Now, tell me where Indian Creek is. Let's get this call here.
All right.
Good morning, you're live on Old Town Cleveland.
Hello, Ron and Debbie.
Hey, Miss Ella, how you doing today?
Hi, Miss Ella.
What's going on?
I feel real good today. I'm thinking about Gordon Pokies tonight.
Well, you didn't go last night?
No.
Oh, so you're going to go Pokies tonight, hey?
They have a new band again. I don't know if I've heard them before or not.
Oh, well.
Well, they'll have to play fast music
Yeah,
to keep
but
up with you.
But they got the same brand beer, though.
Yeah, I know.
If you drink enough beer, all them bands sounds good.
Well, I feel good. You know, I want to go out and party.
So have you got a table reserved there at Pokies?
Well, no, not really, but I hope that it's there when I get there. Because nobody hardly comes at 7 o'clock, so that's what time I go there.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good there. So.
Don't nobody on the radio go there and get my seat.
Okay. All right, Miss Ella. Thank you.
Good to hear from you. Bye-bye. Now, tell me where Indian Creek is. I'm not familiar with that one.
If you're going east from the dam,
Mhm.
you turn to the right like you were going up toward, I guess, Silco.
Mhm.
And then you would bear to the left off of that is where Indian Creek comes in. Just a little bit southeast of Silco.
Okay.
Good morning. You're live on Old Town Cleveland.
Good morning, Ron.
Hey, Bernice. How are you?
I'm not doing good. I have macular degeneration and I can't see good.
Oh, I'm
no.
sorry, baby.
I know. The Korean veteran is at the farmer's market.
What's he got today?
He's got beans and tomatoes and cucumbers and okra and onions and whatever.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Hey, Nothing like a mess of whatever.
Does he have those lazy beans?
Oh, no, he's got stringless beans.
He's not the only one that's at the farmer's market this morning. I was up there earlier, and there's a whole variety of vegetables and many things there. My wife was there earlier selling sweet corn. We got a young man up there that's selling some really good sweet corn grown right there on the banks of the Ocoee River.
Yeah, I know you, Mr. Patcher.
Do you?
Have you got a corn maze this year?
I've got a corn maze. A lot of folks think I don't because every once in a while you got to rotate because of the crop diseases and the plant health. So we put the soybean maze, which we've done for 8 years, and this is our 9th corn maze. But soybean maze is so much fun for the little kids because the parents can see those little heads bopping through that soybean maze. And it's right out there at the highway, but the corn maze is come along great, and it's in the back.
I wondered about that because it looked kind of short.
My husband, too, Joe.
Pardon?
You know my husband, too.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's the Korean veteran there.
Okay, great. Yes.
You know him, don't you, Mr. Patcher?
I didn't catch the last name.
Ed Wade.
Ed Wade. I think I do. Uh-huh.
He used to help Clarence Hire, remember?
Yes, I know Clarence real well.
Yeah, he used to help Clarence. He thinks a lot of you, my husband does.
Yes, I remember well now.
Okay.
Yes, and Clarence is a good friend of mine.
Yeah, he's a good friend of ours, too.
Right.
I appreciate you and sorry.
Thank you, Bernice.
Bye, darling.
Bye-bye. Woo, some good sweet corn sounds good.
It does.
But get up there and see Bernice and everybody else up there at the farmer's market on
John,
Pierce Road.
what other families lived there along where people got flooded out? Do you know? Well, we got the phones ringing now.
Every time you say John, the phone rings.
Yeah. You're live on Old Town Cleveland.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, Ed, what's up, buddy?
Well, I don't know much history about that TVA and stuff, but my uncle worked up there on Parksville Dam.
What'd he do? Do you know?
Probably drove mules.
Well, now, Mr. Lewis brought a picture when we were doing showing Caney Creek so much. He brought a picture of his daddy with mules moving some of the first logs that came out of there when they were building the dam.
Well, Uncle George was a horseman, and he rented mules to the railroad, and he was working there on the dam, and he told a little old gruesome story about the boiler blowing up. Two guys were betting where it redlined at during dinner time, and they bet their paychecks one to the other that where it would pop off at. And he said he was sitting on a fence eating dinner talking to a guy, and all of a sudden that guy didn't have a head.
Oh, no.
I said it's gruesome. Anyway, yeah, they blowed the boiler up. They didn't allow for the extra heat.
Wow.
And after it redlined, it just kept getting hot.
That was days before OSHA.
And, yeah.
How's your reunion coming, Mr. Ed?
Story told about Parksville Lake, or Parksville Dam when they was building it. Okay, I've got some news.
All right, go ahead.
McKinney reunion today at Red Clay.
Okay.
McKinney family.
Yeah, just come on down and eat some and have a good time.
Well, you got any good food?
Oh, they always have food to take home. That's the reason I'm going.
Well, I think I'm related.
Anyway, the 28th, Tavena reunion. We'll be all fired up and ready to go. Everybody ought to be ready for that Hawaiian style.
Ed'll have on his grass skirt.
Well, I didn't make too much. I got me a shirt finally, but I just don't. I can't find a grass long enough to cover my legs. I put one on, and it looks like a Kildee hid in there, so I just decided to quit that. Shame on me. Good morning to all of you. Thank you, but yeah, we're going to have these reunions now, so get-togethers. Enjoy each other and just have a good time.
That's right, Mr. Ed. Write down everything you know. Bye.
Mr. Ed, concerning that picture, I found it quite interesting whenever I looked at that picture and I saw down and that first load of lumber came in. I believe there was a Wash Burns that was in that picture, and I can remember going to church with Wash whenever I was a youngster. So it makes it a reality, you know, that it's been in not that far back. When we talk about 100 years, we think that's been forever,
But some of those older folks that hung on can tell us all about it.
Good morning, live on Old Town Cleveland.
Good morning, Mr. Ron and Deb. How you doing?
Hey, Bullet, what's up, buddy?
I just want to tell Ron I'm about to get his autograph because I'm listening to him on radio. I'm also listening to him on TV right now.
Let's don't make him think he's a celebrity.
Well, I think we're the replay of the football game's on.
Yeah,
then.
I am watching it right now.
Well, they do a pretty good job there at WTMB broadcasting the football games.
I just want to say that you sound good. I sat beside old Joe Palo, and I'd like to say I'm about to get your autograph, I believe.
Well, just come on down here and bring $20, and I'll be glad to give you one.
You know, they're talking about most of the dam and stuff in Polk County.
Yes.
I tell you what, I remember your guests probably remember back in the early 70s, Lively's Restaurant used to be up on 411.
Oh, Lively's Restaurant, yeah.
I used to go there a lot.
Well, in the 1970s, I remember the Lively's had some good-looking daughters. That's what I remembered.
I don't remember that, but anyway, Ron, I just wanted to congratulate you on your part here in our community. I think you and Deb are doing a great thing, and I appreciate you on what you're doing.
Hey, how come you didn't get that trivia question last night?
Well, I actually, I was going to let somebody else try to call in, and as soon as I heard it, I tried to call in. I actually called the Whoop radio station.
Wrong number last night.
Yeah, I just messed up on it.
Well, did you have the right answer?
Well, not at first, but after they gave me a clue, I knew exactly what it was. And if I'd have won, I was going to give it to somebody else.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, I actually tried to call, and I actually called in the Whoop radio station.
Just force a habit.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Bullet.
Okay, we'll see.
We asked a trivia question last night on WTMB. We do a football program wrap-up of all the local football games, and we asked that county trustee Mike Smith played quarterback for Bradley High School, and his senior year, what was his number? And apparently no one remembers him playing quarterback because it took a while for people. Number 18. Good morning, live on Old Town Cleveland.
Yeah, this is Pappy's brother.
Hey,
Pappy, brother. Go ahead.
And he needs your prayer this morning. He's in Memorial Hospital. They said he had a broke back. So, and he's getting on up there in years. So just have all the listeners to pray for him.
We will do
sure
that. We certainly love Pappy's calls. You tell him we're thinking about him.
All right, and he'll get mad at me for telling everybody because he didn't want nobody to know it.
That's okay. When he's able to get up and whoop you, it'll be a good thing.
Yeah.
All righty.
Okay,
Thank you,
y'all have a
sweetie.
good one.
Bye-bye. Pappy calls in and tells, oh, gosh, I wish I could download what's in his brain into my brain.
Let's see when we say John without the phone ring. What other families lived up in that valley and up through there that got displaced? See, we said your name and what happened. Good morning, live on Old Town Cleveland.
Yeah, this is T. Vandy.
Hey, T.
Hey there, T.
Talk about the fish truck, the 21st.
Well, go ahead.
Well, I got a fish truck coming the 21st, Flathead, at 11 o'clock to 12 down at the co-op. And
Can they still order fish, T?
they order fish from 478-2405.
Okay, good deal.
I just want to say hello to Joe. I hadn't seen Joe in years.
T, I believe that ordering fish down there has been going on, 40 years at least?
It's been, well, I retired and brought it home with me, so
Oh, you did?
it's been a long time.
Well, you know, it was 40 years ago we were working together down there.
I know it. I remember when you got out of high school.
Yeah, that's right.
You broke the first 2 Tramasol worm bottles we got.
That's exactly right. I was holding that bottle of Tramadol, and that was like gold. It was nearly $50. And the first bottle that came in the co-op, I was trying to put it on the shelf, and it slipped. I was thinking before that it'd be so sad if that dropped. It dropped, and you just wanted to pick it up off the floor, but T, it wouldn't come.
$100 a bottle or something like that.
It's 50. It's about 50 then.
Was it?
But that was a lot of money then.
Now, I remember you was trying to please the boss one time, and I just got through making a display down there. And
you come and started to redo it, and you said Mr. Bill told me to do that. I said, Mr. Bill's running that back there. I'm running this up here.
You had your good electric fence chargers too, didn't you, T? You had good electric fence chargers too, didn't you?
Yeah.
You know, that electricity, we was talking about number one and electricity, but T was an expert on those electric fence chargers. He could get them fixed.
Just got through fixing one yesterday.
Did you?
Yeah.
Still at it?
Yeah, still working at it, yeah.
All right.
I've had a wonderful year. I got broke hip, replaced both of my knees. Now I got a wound.
And his defibrillators quit working.
Yeah, my defibrillators. Got to go huge and get wires run up my leg and abrasion done on my heart. So I'm hanging in there. I'll be 80 the 23rd.
There you go.
Congratulations, T. You're making a lot of miles there.
Still selling fish.
Yeah, still selling fish. Yeah, I need to sell some fish. That's what I buy Merlin dinner with.
Thanks,
you
T.
guys have a good time.
Thank you, hon.
Bye.
Stay tuned. Bye-bye.
Try it again, John.
Well, Ron, I don't remember my folks talking too much about other families that lived on Indian Creek, but they moved from there, and as soon as they started the number 2 project, they moved up on Fairview on top of the mountain there.
There was a school up there.
Yes.
Okay.
Fairview School, I think the church and school was in the same building maybe. But they and the Halls lived up there. And the way they got to their house was up a little creek right there next to Powerhouse number 2. My mother said when they moved out of there, it was so steep that they had to tie ropes to the wagon and ease it down the mountain to keep it from running over the mules. But they furnished milk and butter to the workers on number 2. Mm-hmm. They had a little dairy up there. And I guess my mother was, she was about 5 years old when that project started. And
is your mother still with you?
No, she was a school teacher and lived till 1990. And but she remembered a lot of history from that area.
In some of the really old newspaper articles, some of the folks that lived at Caney Creek talked about that they went to school at Fairview a couple of years and about going to Fairview to church. So I figured it was fairly close by.
It is. Almost straight up on the ridge above Powerhouse number 2. Back when they were rebuilding the flume, as I started doing some photography work for the company that was erecting the new flume out of Portland, Oregon. And that's where I got really interested in it and got into the video business by the encouragement of the guy that owned that company. So I started shooting a lot of footage of them erecting the new flume. So later in the 80s, I put that project together, and I wasn't aware of the archives that you folks got into. I went to Norris, Tennessee, to TVA's library up there.
Right.
What I'm finding is the stuff's not all in one place.
Yes.
And so you kind of have to just, the reason that we knew about that is David Swafford had been researching the movie Wild River, and there was a little bit of a display down there in the National Archives about that. And so we just kind of went down there with him, but it's pretty amazing to see this documentation about the number of houses and stuff. Now, do you still have some photographs from the rebuild? Photographs? Do you
Probably
think?
only a few. Most of that I've photographed on site at the library there at Norris, Tennessee.
A young man named Travis Simpson, he's been on our show before. I'd say under the age of 40, well under the age of 40. Lives in Ooltewah, works for TVA. He's writing a book about Powerhouse number 2 and the building of the flume line, and a couple of your pictures might be a nice addition to that book.
Okay.
if we can help him get those. Anybody under the age of 40 that's interested in history, I want to help them all I can.
Oh, yes.
He came and picked up every scrapbook I had and every picture I had for Caney Creek, and he said, I'm surprised you're entrusting me with this. And I told him the same thing. I said, if you're writing a book and I can help in any way. But he is a engineer of sorts, and so he's really interested in the exact measurements and how the flume worked, and so I think all those questions that people ask us about the flume line, Travis's book's going to answer.
Okay. Has he been to the Norris Library?
I have no idea.
That's
a
good source.
I know that he found a picture of every house at Caney Creek.
Well.
And I wasn't able to do that, but he knew he went down to the National Archives where we had been.
Mm-hmm.
He just stayed longer and dug deeper and was more clear, I think, about what he thought was there.
It's amazing after we showed the video, and Deb has a little companion book with it also, that people started bringing us pictures. We said, we sure would like to have that for that. Like the tennis court. There was a tennis court at Caney Creek. And we had a picture of two people standing on the tennis court, but not the rest of the tennis court. And guess what? We do now.
A few days afterwards, someone showed up with a great picture of the corner of the tennis court and the two houses behind the hotel that I couldn't find a picture of. Now, Joe, you came up to Walker Valley and saw that little video. What'd you think about that? What'd you think about the video?
You're talking about at Walker Valley?
Yeah, at Caney Creek.
Yes, I thought that was wonderful. It's interesting you mentioned Bill Poston there. I mean, the tennis court at Caney Creek, because Bill Poston, when I asked him about the trees, and he said there were, or poles, and he said there were trees being raised right there in the Silco Inlet. I said, what happened when they raised the lake level? And he said, well, me and Jack, that was his brother, said we found tennis balls. I said, what? He said, yeah, we had a tennis court. And Debbie, am I correct that they had an electric operated train there in 1913 in Caney Creek?
Battery operated. They'd take it down to the little shed there and plug it up, and it'd recharge the batteries, and it ran off battery power. Now the locomotive that they used there, some people called it the dinky, some people called it the locomotive. So for a long time I thought it was two different things, and then I finally figured out it was the same thing. I think it was steam powered, and it would shoot cinders up out of the smokestack. And so they finally had a cap of a thing that they put that shot the hot cinders out into the river to keep, because they kept catching everything on fire.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. It's just amazing to me how they did all this at that point in time.
Right.
But yeah, Alex, I think and talking about Norris, we had a gentleman on here. His name's Charlie Randolph, whose mother was the only person forcibly removed from their land by TVA, Mattie Randolph. There's a boat dock up at Norris called Mattie Randolph. But Charlie was in here. He was 9 years old, and the story Wild River is where they forced people off and burned the house. Well, this is exactly what they did to Mattie Randolph. He said, one of my favorite comments, he said that they started flooding it, and they were still there, and that they were in their boat picking roasting ears. We like
That's what he said, roasting ears, right into the flat
floating
bottom
down
boat.
through the cornfield, picking the roasting ears, and then the federal marshals showed up and loaded them into boats and trucks and wagons and hauled them out and burned their cabin to the ground, like in the movie Wild River, and they took them to the poorhouse and dropped them off.
Their poorhouse with all their animals, cows, pigs.
It's the only time in TVA history that they forcibly removed somebody. And then, ironically, they come and made a movie about it here in Cleveland, where the son actually lives. Charlie's in his nearly 90s now, I think so. But it's pretty interesting. Charlie still lives here in Cleveland, and he can tell you the real story of Wild River from Norris Dam. But now, at Parksville there, and I go back to a lot of time is because, people said, well, gosh, I've got a picture of a guy that fell off the Parksville Dam and lived. Chris DeGennaro or something like that. He was an Italian immigrant. He fell off the dam, all 110 feet of it, and all he lost was a bunch of fingers and toes where he slid down the cement, and it burned him off as he slid down through there. People said, well, he couldn't have done that because TVA built that dam. I said, no, it is the oldest dam in the TVA system, but TVA wasn't even formed or thought of till, actually in the 1930s, and then I think 1938 is when they actually got into force, and they said, we're going to buy Parksville 1, 2, and 3. They're ours, basically, and and it went all the way to Supreme Court battle because they said, no, we're not going to sell to you, and they were forced to. But before all that was built, down there was a mill, and the river was a small river compared to what it is today, and it just runs along there, and there are families living all along the river. I mean, water, and if there was the copper road, it was probably wherever it was, it would have been closer to the river. And when they flooded all that, the roads were gone. What roads they were there, what houses were there, they're all flooded and they were all gone. And then they did make that pig trail, Joe, as you talked about, because Doc German talks about they would leave Caney Creek in the morning, and it would take them almost a half a day to get to Parksville because they'd have to take axes with them, cut down little pine saplings and throw them into the ruts of that little pig trail they had along the edge of we know as the river today. And then and people just don't realize that this was just
well,
also
and it wasn't like little log shacks either along the river. I know we found the picture today of a house that was up at Parksville. That was a very nice looking house.
We don't know
what you were going to say.
I have no idea either now. But
you were talking, Ron. You were talking about the throwing things in the pig trail.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back to the old copper road itself.
Mm-hmm.
And we envision highways today where we could just drive, but those old timers didn't. I don't think they had gravel much, and so in the wintertime ground would get wallowed out, and they had the copper road that went from Ducktown basically to Cleveland, Tennessee.
Right.
And the reason they done it is they did not have a railroad from Etowah to Ducktown, so they had not a railroad. And they hauled on the old copper road. That's what it's all about, was hauling either the ore or the iron ore, I'm not sure which, to Cleveland, Tennessee. And they would camp just east of Cleveland, at what I understand from some other people, the Froggy Bottoms there, and then they had the halfway house, which was not too far from where John's talking about on the other side of the lake, that peaceful little inlet up at Indian Creek where he was talking about that some of his folks were, the wonderful fishing hole, but they went up this old copper road and they get stuck. And it's kind of a legend that this gentleman would get his mule stuck, and he wouldn't worry about it. He'd just get out and he'd take his fiddle, and he'd fiddle until those mules got in the notion of going on, and they called him Fiddling George Barnes.
I love it.
I understand also that the halfway house and then over here at Frogtown or Frog Bottoms that they particularly here in Cleveland that you could get liquid refreshment and also female companionship too if you were
it's quite shady characters, I think.
And Mr. Roth, who owned the big house here, who could watch his copper being shipped from the railroad here, also had a store down here, and he sold all the groceries and the supplies and sent it back up the copper road with these things. So he was making money going up the mountain and down the mountain, and some people got a little angry at him, but he was one time one of the richest men in Tennessee. Lived right here in Cleveland, Tennessee, and the copper road, like you said, was the main way to get it out here.
One thing that amazed us that we saw down at the National Archives is that there was a list of deaths during the building of the dam, and they would list the name of somebody and say, he fell or got hit by a tree or whatever, got hurt on the railroad or whatever. But a lot of times it would just say an Italian immigrant or a man of color. It wouldn't put their names, and I thought that was so sad when I read that how. And of course, we know that all the living quarters up there was segregated.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember my mother talking about the different camps for different nationalities.
Right. Yeah. Just not black and white segregation. It was Irish and Italian and all different immigrants.
And our listeners have heard this story before, but I think one of my favorite stories about the different nationalities being there is the Hungarians were the shovel guys. And whoever was in charge of the building of the dam decided that it didn't take a lot of skill to operate a shovel, so he was going to cut their pay in half. So they showed up the next day with a couple of shovels cut in half to work, and they proved their point without having to speak English. And so they said, okay, we see that everybody's important, and we'll pay you the same as we're paying everybody else. But I thought that was really interesting. The hotel, I had always heard and understood that it was on the hill there above where the little park is now there at Parksville, where the concrete steps are still out there. You know, it's a big chunk.
John could comment more
What
on
do you
that,
think, John?
I suppose.
I really don't know. We moved there in 45, and I remember multiple buildings being there, but I don't exactly remember the hotel.
This would be on the north side of Highway 64. And then the rest of the camp down in there. And then the old pictures that we had on the video, you know, kind of shows the road much where it's at now. Mm-hmm. But Doc and them talk about, and I think I love on the video, Mrs. Trotter saying, my mama said, if you ever get me in here, you won't get me out. And so, you know, and all the women were kind of like that. And you can imagine being taken from the big city of Etowah, which was a booming town until, you know, all the jobs were lost, and them coming up here and living in the, you know, the wilderness. But it was pretty easy living in that wilderness.
Well, and I think the key thing is they moved into the wilderness, and now they had electricity, they had a telephone, they had water and everything. And then in 1940, when most of them got ran out of Caney Creek, they moved into Polk, into Bradley. And they moved, one family moved here to Bradley County, and they had running water all right. It ran down behind the house, and you had a pump, and so they didn't have indoor plumbing. They didn't have toilets. They didn't have electricity. Didn't have telephone. So they went backwards in time. They lived, you know, you always think living in the mountains of Polk County, and you had electricity before the rest of the world. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty. And interesting thing also in those old pictures from all those workers there is they always had their pictures made with the tools of their trades. Right. Some of them were done rock, you know, blew up rocks, and some of them, but they had their axes with them and their shovels with them.
Mm-hmm. Or T-squares. They'd show you the T-squares a lot.
I have a picture in a few minutes. I'll show you that you know, the axemen were not all men. There were young boys there too. Yeah. And Joe, they had to cut a lot of trees. I mean, you know, we know in Copper Hill they cut every darn tree for 25 miles. I mean, 25 square miles there, and of course we know what happened to. We all grew up looking at the landscape of the moon up there in Copper Hill and being amazed by it. But
Ron and I were real tickled this morning at breakfast. We were looking at the rebirth of Parksville here, and it shows the fire tower near Ducktown in Tennessee, and there wasn't a tree anywhere in the picture
I'm
that
trying
you
to figure
could
out what you needed a fire tower for in Ducktown. But
well, some of the pictures I got from the Norris Library shows in the vicinity of the number 2 dam, diversion dam there wasn't a tree on those ridges.
Oh,
they
yeah.
were clear cut.
Yeah, we got Mundig Bluff. Mm-hmm. There's no trees from the river all the way up.
Oh, that was a cash crop, and the power company wasn't interested in those trees. So when people sold their property, they took their trees off of there and made a little bit more money.
And of course, you know, now just of course, interesting things. I always said, well, wonder what happened to all that dirt up in Copper Hill. And they said not only did the topsoil, it's like 2 levels of earth from the topsoil down went all the way to almost to just nothing to rock. And I understand that there was TVA and the chemical company had battles all the time because all that dirt washed down into the river, and it would get to the number 2 diversion dam, and constantly they were having to dig it out and you just didn't think about all the dirt that's passed through the Ocoee River.
Yeah, Joe Fetcher's farming some of it down there on his place.
It grows pretty good corn.
Yeah.
Well, does it light up at night?
what you're actually talking about is the siltation that's in the back of the lake, and the fact that there is a number 3 dam that people don't see, and that is a problem I understand there. Of course, the number 2 dam is very obvious. It's right at the Whitewater rafting put in, and but that siltation I can remember, and I know John can remember real well when that was just a barren area. I don't know what the boards were in the original flume line, but I can tell you the test flume that they built, since I got to tear the test flume out. And interestingly enough, one of the tests that they ran on that was to build a fire in under it. It was on a concrete slab to simply see how long it took to burn a hole in it, which was quite relevant to the flume. That's the only test I personally know they done. But there's just 2 boards in that flume.
Mm-hmm.
Except for the catwalk, is my understanding. John, you've been there. You could tell us more.
The old flume was just yellow pine. It wasn't even treated originally. And, of course, it was constantly being
leaking.
in repair. But the new one was, I'm thinking it's 3x9, pressure treated. And that came from a variety of mills in the South. But it's tongue and groove. I was riding up the incline there one day with a TVA engineer, and he was saying, just a young guy, you could tell he hadn't been on the job long, and he said, people think they're driving all these nails up here by hand. He said they don't know they've got a nailer. Well, I've got video of them driving every one of those 60-penny nails by hand.
I can tell you it's one of the worst jobs I ever got into, was tearing down just a 30-foot model of that thing. It's nailed, it's glued. You could take pry bars and pinch bars and everything else and sledgehammers, and you couldn't hardly beat that thing apart. And it had the, like John's talking about, they had the full 1-inch tongue and groove, and I think is 8 or 9 inches the board, and then it had a 6x8 dressed, and it had a little dowel down the side and steel running in under. And I've never had the privilege, John, you have, of seeing that flume from above, but I bet that water's fast in that thing.
It is.
Can you imagine falling in?
No, you wouldn't want to go wading in that thing.
No.
It's the end of the ride that it gets you down that big tube. Hey, guys, we're going to take a break. We'll be back here in about 3 or 4 minutes. You're listening to Old Town Cleveland.
WOOP LP, Cleveland, Tennessee.
Check into cash. When you got a Money Mayday and can't wait till payday, get cash fast at Check into Cash. You don't need a check to get a cash advance. You can get cash fast at Check into Cash. Call 877-262-CASH. We're licensed and regulated by the state. We can guarantee you'll get a great rate. Apply online. Don't hesitate. Get cash fast at Check into Cash.
Get on down. Check into cash.
Wheeler Technologies has moved. Visit them at their new location at 490 Grove Avenue Southwest next to Bradley Rentals. Same great folks, same great service with a better location to serve you. Call Wheeler Technologies for voice, data, and security needs at 664-TECH. That's 664-8324. And remember, depend on Wheeler Technologies for the current time and temperature every day at 476-1111. Tennessee Alarm Contractor C1750.
You save when you buy from the factory. Now you can save even more while we celebrate the grand opening of our new store on the North Shore in Chattanooga. Plus, we'll pay your sales tax on Mermaid products $6.99 or more.
Kiesler Incorporated is in the business of recycling your metal, and they pay cash. The only covered scrapyard around where you can recycle rain or shine. They're located off the bypass on Overhead Bridge Road. Automobiles, appliances, copper, stainless steel, tin, all metals can be recycled at Kiesler, and you can walk away with cash. That's right, they pay cash, and they are the friendliest scrapyard in the Southeast. If you have unwanted metal just laying around, bring it to Kiesler Recycling today and walk away with cash. Kiesler Recycling open Monday through Saturday, 7:30 to 5, or call for more details, 614-3000.
I'm Brooke Chaffin. Here's a look at your weather forecast. Partly sunny skies today with highs in the upper 80s. A slight chance for an afternoon shower. Lows overnight in the mid-60s. Partly sunny Sunday with highs near 90 and a 20% chance of an afternoon shower. That's a look at your weather forecast on WOOP FM.
Tune in every Thursday evening for good sports, all the time, all your local favorites and national favorites too. Good programming and good sports right here every Thursday evening on 99.9 WOOP FM.
Take a minute and think of what you're doing. You're giving your love to any man. When they tell you they love you, you believe them. But it never works out like you planned. From barrooms to bedrooms, that's where your love goes. And I know you're unhappy, 'cause woman shows. They won't let you be a lady, 'cause everyone knows. From barrooms to bedrooms, that's where you're.
When you buy or sell or pawn,
You can't go wrong at U.S. Money Shops.
when money's tight, you'll be
Cause
alright.
relief's in sight at U.S. Money Shops.
Hey, Glenn here from U.S. Money Shops. If you're looking for extra cash, whether it's $50, $500, or even $50,000, then U.S. Money Shops just may be the place for you. We're a pawn shop like no other. Buy, sell, pawn, we do it all.
Pawn with us,
We'll earn your trust.
sell to us, without any fuss. Buy from us.
You can rely on us.
U.S. Money Shops offers the best selection of electronics, tools, firearms, jewelry, and more. You name it, we got it. So when you need cash or want a deal, visit U.S. Money Shops, the best pawn shop in town. And remember, we cash all checks and buy gift cards. Now we're several locations to serve you. Visit U.S. Money Shops today for the best deal around.
Buy or sell or pawn today. The better way at U.S. Money Shops.
Visit usmoneyshops.com for the store nearest you.
Check into cash.
To get the most money, turn your car into cash at Check Into Cash. You don't need a check to get a payday advance at Check Into Cash. Apply online or stop on by at Check Into Cash. Get a payday advance or a title loan. When you need cash fast, visit Check Into Cash. Visit checkintocash.com or call 877-262-CASH for more information.
Get on down. Check into cash.
The Village Bake Shop has been serving the sweet needs of folks in the area since 1961. Need a specialty cake? Well, all you need is a photo or just an idea, and Teresa at the Village Bake Shop will make sure you get that special cake for any occasion. I've enjoyed the Village Bake Shop for years and always got birthday cakes, wedding cakes, and more. Any cake for any special occasion from the Village Bake Shop is always fresh and delicious. And of course, the Village Bake Shop has all your other sweet cravings taken care of too. Plus their world-famous thumbprint cookies that are shipped all over the world. The Village Bake Shop, Village Green Town Center, right here in Cleveland. Phone 476-5179.
Come celebrate our newest Mermaid Mattress store downtown on North Market Street with factory direct prices and up to 5 years interest-free financing at all Mermaid Mattress locations.
Welcome back to Old Town Cleveland here on Whoop FM 99.9 or on the internet at www.whoopfm.com. You can call us here at 614-5553. We got Joe Fetzer.
Right.
All right. I keep on adding into it, don't I?
Right.
And then John Miles here, and we're talking about we've been talking about the Ocoee Dam, talking a little bit about Polk County and the area there, and we won't talk about what we talked about on the breaks there. But,
Well,
I want to ask about the water there in the Parksville Lake. it wasn't. It was a really blue water, wasn't it?
Well, it's very very clear in the river now. I can notice much difference since it's been cleaned. But I couldn't tell you that back in those days. My memory doesn't go back that far.
Well, to me, I remember going up there and that it was a crystal blue, and I think there may have been some chemicals that got into the water over the years, and the fish wasn't as good. And Deb used to talk about going up there, and she wouldn't wear a good bathing suit because it would eat
Wasn't
them
thinking
off.
about my skin, but I was thinking about, it might damage my good bathing suit.
Yeah.
Ron, before we go on, I want to mention, because I don't want to forget.
Okay.
We lost a wonderful educator here in Bradley County yesterday, Miss Shirley McIntyre. She taught chemistry and algebra and physics at Bradley High School, and probably some other things other than that. And Eddie Cartwright tells me she was a fabulous basketball player for Coach Kyle in 1948 also. And we also lost Mrs. Fred Underdown, and Fred is the president of the Historical Society up in McMinn County. He's helping us a lot with our dirt track racing up there, and we certainly would like to remember those losses as
And
well.
while we mentioned that, we are doing a documentary on dirt track racers, and we just got back from Dawsonville, Georgia last weekend, and recorded several dirt track Hall of Famers down at the Dawsonville in the north. It's the Georgia NASCAR Hall of Fame is located in Dawsonville, Georgia, and we interviewed.
And they claim that NASCAR started there, and we'll let them claim that.
And Mr. Of course, all these guys raced with Mr. France in their first races in NASCAR, and they were dirt track racers, and every one of them ran moonshine.
And they admit
They
it.
admit it happily. Some of them started making moonshine when we were 9, and Charlie Mincy ran it from age 14 to the age 19 from Dawsonville to Atlanta 7 days a week. And he said he got jumped a lot by the malls and had a lot of fun coming back, never got caught, and then he got into racing and raced on into NASCAR in the early days of NASCAR. So pretty interesting. So if anybody has pictures or old videos or old 8mm films of dirt track racing anywhere in the area, we're trying to go from all the way from Gatlinburg to Dawsonville is where we're covering that. We've been doing a lot of filming down at Boyd Speedway in Chattanooga, and the owners down at Boyd have allowed us to come in and do whatever we need down there, and we've been in the pits and on the flag stand and everywhere else, and so we have a great time. So if you have old pictures and old stories, get done. We're hoping that comes out in April of 2014 if I get it done. So that's where we're. And John, you know how that is. The filming's the easy part. Putting it all together gets hard.
We just kind of sit there and look at it for a little while until some inspiration hits me, and then we go. But it's going to be a fun video, and
I bet.
And we filmed them there in the NASCAR Hall of Fame, and all these great cars behind them. And we had 2 ladies that had done a powder puff derby, and they talked about one of them wrecked the other one, and she won the trophy. And so we have these 2 70-something-year-old women arguing over who the trophy should belong to.
Yeah,
so
and,
it's really fun.
And the 7-year-old woman brought the trophy with her from when she come down to do the filming, and I thought that was funny. She come and she wanted to hold it while we were filming her, and then both of them's name was Barbara. So I didn't have any trouble remembering the name.
And I think the thing that amazed us that we didn't know was the connection between Dawsonville and Daytona Beach. They ran on the sand there 18 years, something like that. And how many winners did they have from Dawsonville? 12?
7. 7 national champions come out of Dawsonville. And
well, I know that Gobe Sosby won it 3 times.
Gober Sosby.
Gobe. Back to Parksville.
Parksville, and I want to talk about, and you guys may remember that they had a flood there a few years ago.
Back in 1990.
I believe
there was a lot of
that.
water come down through there.
There was, I don't know whether it was there at the house or on back up the river, but there was somewhere they recorded 43,000 something or thereabouts cubic feet per second. To put that in relation, ballpark of 3,300 cubic feet, not thousand before, but 47,000, I believe, or something. It was a huge number.
It was a bunch.
Huge number. The river, like I said, it varied where there were wider places, it was shallower, but right there at that railroad bridge, it was probably close to 25 feet that the water was up.
And it's normally what?
Well, it's normally, it varies too, but there's normally about 3,300 cubic feet per second. A few years ago, it was only 4 turbines instead of 5 could operate in the summertime because of the heat in the powerhouse. But back in late 70s thereabouts, Mr. Wayne Smith was superintendent up there after that, and he said we brought it up to a 1980 vintage. They redone the powerhouse, and back in the 70s, early 70s, we had a young farmers club, and we got to go into that powerhouse, and it was so fascinating to me to see that power generation and the controls like we're seeing here today, the meters and so forth, and it looked like that was 1950s equipment instead of 1910, 11, 12 equipment. And I can remember of course they salvaged what they could, and they sold 3 items at a sale, and the copper that they sold at that time's prices was over $40,000 worth of copper that came out of number 1. So
So originally, you're talking about the turbines.
The turbines and any kind of.
How many were there originally?
There's 5, and I think there's still 5
Okay,
today.
and then in powerhouse number 2, I think there's 3. 2? Are there 2? Okay. I've been in there, but my brain don't remember.
Number 3, my dad's brother rigged the steel on it on number 3 powerhouse. I found the blueprints to it when I was a kid.
And that's something.
But so Ocoee's meant a lot to me. You know, we had a rock slide up there that really disturbed things, and a more recent one. And in our corn maze one year, we put Ocoee really rocks.
Yeah,
and,
it really does.
So
what's the
John,
theme this year?
Theme this year is that the river of life is for all. We've tried to remain with something about the river since we started. We didn't think we would continue on that, but John has flown us over and flown a lot of reporters over to see, and we hope that we get to again this time to see this thing from there, to see that it's really there, and take a picture of it.
All right, I got to know, how do you get it from an ideal in your head to the cornfield?
Well,
how does that designing work?
The design, the very first one we done, we were reluctant to do one for years because we just thought it was too much work and whatnot, and couldn't get enough people to run it. But we finally decided when I saw the Bicentennial Mall in Nashville, I said the rivers and whatnot of Tennessee. So we focused on the rivers and the Indian Traces, and we put 1796 because that's when Tennessee started. We put the sun and the moon. They travel by the rivers and the Indian Traces, and my wife could tell you all about it. We designed that, built it, and it was something to do. But after that, I said, we've got to have some help. So we went to a maze company, the largest in the world, and they designed it. We bat ideas back and forth, and they come up with several pages of computer printout. But everybody asked us, is it GPS? And I said, no. We do it. Even they done it for a couple of 3 years there, and then we started doing it ourselves, cutting it out. And the cutting out process takes a lot of map reading and designing.
Let me give some credit here where credit's due.
Oh, you're talking about, I was fixing to get to that. The way we really cut it out is I follow my wife.
Exactly.
That's what I was getting
His
to.
wife is a mathematician, so she knows how to do it.
And she says, go here, and you say, yes, ma'am, and that's where you go.
Okay, now if we flew over it this year, what does it look like?
Well, it looks like a tractor and an old farmer out there because we're still growing corn, and it says the river of life for all, and then it's got the river and it's got a tree of life, and it goes back to some verses in Revelation, and it's available for all.
Now, how long does it take you to get out of there?
Well, it depends on how fast you want to go and whether you want to do it by the stations, but it's really the best trip through it is early on. It may be a little warmer, and on our opening day, which is September the 21st, we're going to have some prizes. We're going to be able to come in there for just $5 a person, whereas we're normally $9, and we feel like that's very reasonable for all the things that they get to do. We like to see families have fun. We like to see couples and individuals come in and have fun, and it's a real thrill and a challenge. A lot of memories are made going through the maze, but not only that, doing the hayride wagons, going to the pumpkin patch. A lot of groups will want a bonfire. We have the cow train. We've got a water wars thing up there. And my wife has come up with all kinds of things, from barnyard croquet to a fairy tale trail this year, to the soybean maze is Veggie Tales. She's kind of
do you have any cow pie tossing or anything?
No. Well, we may yet come up with some things, and she didn't actually.
If somebody will pay for it, you'll let them throw cow pies,
well,
right?
it's not all about the money. We want to give back.
But you would do it for money, though, wouldn't you?
You have to bring your own.
You have to bring your own.
To the community, we want to give back.
Do you grow the pumpkins?
I mean, yes, we grow our own pumpkins.
We saw down in Dawsonville the other day. You could see their patch from the highway for miles. Would you say a couple miles? It was fascinating to see all those giant, and some of them were huge. I mean, they looked huge from where we were.
What do you cut the paths with? I mean, you go out there with a hand, or do you do it with a tractor? Or I mean, how do you cut the path through the corn?
Takes a whole lot of scratching for an old farmer to do that. But it really does. But we get those paths cut out. Actually, this year, my wife, she still thinks she can play basketball. So she decided that she was on a winning team for Tennessee, and they went and represented in the Nationals at the Senior Olympics basketball.
Oh.
So me and a young man.
So she's with Darlene Goins and those folks?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. And they rated 5th in the nation. I was kind of proud
Mary
of them.
Tim Bergen's
Right,
their
Mary
coach.
Tim, right. And so
well, good for her.
They went to Cleveland, Ohio, and a young man just out of high school done an awful lot of the work that she done, and I done a lot of the scratching.
So now, what kind of corn is it?
It's field corn.
Is it?
Yeah, it's field corn.
See, now I'm not a farmer.
Right.
I've ate a lot of the stuff you've grown.
Okay. Okay.
I ate but just field corn to be feed. I call it feed corn.
Yes, it's for livestock feed.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people don't realize the importance of these crops out here, because they think of, well, I don't eat. I'll get a hamburger or chicken or whatever, and I don't eat that much corn or soybeans. But when you get right down to it, there are food products directly from those crops, but the protein basis of our diets is largely the soybean meal. It's very high protein, and much of the energy sources, not all, but much of it that's going into animal feed is from corn.
Right.
So the agricultural education point of view, particularly to younger people who've been far removed, John, from the days of the grist mill, when you got and you give a turn of corn, you didn't have money, you just give a turn of corn to the miller, a portion of it, so you get your corn ground. And the agricultural part of it is a real important part of our life. We couldn't have the standard of living in this country if we didn't have the agriculture.
And we take our farmers for granted, and we take the hands that pick and work on stuff for granted too. Let me ask. Across the road there from you guys, there's a little, I believe it's a red brick house and a barn. Who lived in that house?
That was Miss Copeland. Her husband, G.V. Copeland, was an operator up at the dam, and she. I think she was a McCamey originally. A lot of those names are very well rooted in Polk County, and I
admire that little
well.
place every time I go
beautiful.
by there in the little barn. And who bales that hay there?
Well, Clarence McClure has farmed it, and they've had switchgrass. Of course, switchgrass was an attempt to and may eventually get to be. Your ethanol production from grass.
We need to be doing that stuff. We don't need to be dependent on these other folks for our power. We need to power ourselves, don't we?
Right. Now, it's been through a lot of research, and it's hit some snags, but it could come back. But it indeed is a great generator of energy if we can harness the
and then my friend Doug Mizell's trying to make ethanol out of kudzu. And that is definitely a replenishable product.
Right.
That's some evil stuff, isn't it?
You talked about crop rotations earlier this year, and I have noticed that there's a lot more soybean being grown in these fields where stands of that feed corn would be up where the Bigs used to live up on 411. It used to be just miles of that corn up there. I thought it was beautiful up there. Now soybean this year. And I said, apparently there's something that someone along from the extensions agents have come through and said, we need to grow soybean for a while now. How did it all of a sudden soybean become the thing that we're growing now, or have I just missed it over the years?
When I was a youngster, there were soybeans were not that commonly grown except for hay.
Mm-hmm.
But now they're grown from Florida to Canada and in many places around the world. They're such an important part of our diet. But the soybean, you talk about the rotation, and the Extension Service does a lot of research and so forth into what we use to grow those.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, you get in corn country or in the river bottoms where it's a lot of moisture or some good soils, you'll see corn grown, but it's a matter of economics, and usually it's corn, soybeans, or corn, wheat, and soybeans. And rotation, because they'll double crop soybeans or they can single crop and get a little bigger yield. But you see those farmers out there on those big equipment, and John's got a son-in-law that does it, and it looks like that, it doesn't take them long to do it, and it's an easy life, but John, tell them about it.
I don't know how many acres I drilled in this back in the spring, but it's the river bottoms. That's another thing we just kind of take for granted living on the Ocoee or the Hiawassee, but they really do produce good crops, and especially soybean. This year we're getting 60+ bushels per acre.
Good.
But the money that's made off a farm is not anywhere like it looks like.
No.
It pays to just keep the lights on and keep working. How long's that piece of land where the corn maze is been in your family? How long?
Basically, it goes way back, except for a few years it was out of the family. My father leased and purchased it back, and so it except for that time period, it goes way on back, probably into the 1800s sometime. Was the Reimers for a good long while. It's some of my.
When I look at that piece of land, it would look obvious to me that there would have been a house up there on the hill. Were there ever any structures on there as long as you lived, or in your lifetime?
I still live in the house that's built about 1904 or 5 before the dam was built.
Where is it?
It's on Welcome Valley Road.
Okay.
And then you talk about structures, and you talked about the camps. Paul Underwood, my family has the Underwood Farm, which was a Tennessee Power Company farm adjacent to the property on the backside of number 1 dam. And Paul was raised up there, and unfortunately we didn't get to, John and I talked about it, but we didn't get to him in time before he got dementia. But he had a lot of stories to tell about how that life was, and it was many people back
So they
in there,
grew a
and
lot of the food and stuff for the project there?
The camps, I don't know that they done that, because the camps were so many hundred people, and those camps were predominantly on the south side of the river that you were talking about, where the workers lived. And it's very, very active place. Polk County was quite wealthy because we had a lot of natural resources. We've got 3 rivers in Polk County, and the natural resources were, of course, the mining and the agriculture and the forestry, and they were big things. But it's if we have a future, it's probably in tourism.
Definitely. The 3 rivers: Conasauga, Jack, Ocoee.
Well, the Jacks
and they got the Hiawassee.
Yeah,
Hiawassee, Ocoee, and Conasauga.
The Jacks River, I'm not sure that
Murray
all of
County.
it's in Georgia, but it is a part of the
I would just knew you had to go through Polk County to get there, the way I went.
Yeah, right.
It becomes the Conasauga.
Yes.
So, did your grandparents or whatever ever talk about the Dutch settlement?
Oh yes, the Dutch settlement I'm not well aware of. John probably is more, but it was a settlement, and I can remember my grandfather talking about this. People lived somewhere even above the Dutch settlement, coming out and wanting to work for a bushel of corn a day or something, you know, and so, you know, times were tough back in those days, and yet those folks, they didn't even seem to know it. They had fun. Those old logging camps up there, they took a whole lot of biscuits. And
there's a lot of people that ask us, well, why don't you do a documentary about the Dutch settlement? And I said, well, there's really no pictures. There's really no one left alive.
No,
There's just what has been written is already known, and that was back up behind Silico, right?
They're
up
on Indian Creek.
Yeah.
Oh, so it was on Indian
Have
Creek.
you ever been up to the Dutch settlement?
I have years ago. Of course, it's grown up in there now. It's nothing identifiable, but I remember the folks that lived up there, the Greens, and my grandfather. We were up there almost every Sunday afternoon, and I remember them talking about the Dutch settlement. But
they were kind of blind to think that they could come in there and keep their lifestyle completely, and once you have pretty girls, they're going to marry them Polk County boys, and so that didn't last very long.
So wasn't it the ideal to make wine up there or something? Was that sort of the ideal? There
was
going to
some
be a
of
wine. Wine was going to be one of their mainstays up there.
You know, when I was growing up, there's a lot of the people that were in management and so forth, and business owners here in Cleveland actually came from Polk County. You know.
Wow. Yeah, they did.
I mean, you think back about it.
Now, you know, my family's from down. When you start going down to the Conasauga end, the Dunns and the Eppersons are my family, my mom's side of the family, and so over into Tinga, Georgia. You know, the big city of Tinga.
When the railroad came through, his family opened a hotel in Tinga.
My mother was from Conasauga, and she used to tell about riding the dinky on Sunday afternoon when they weren't running the train.
The short
to
dog.
do the logging. Well, they'd ride the dinky way back into Jacks River in the wintertime. I mean, on Sunday. And then during World War II, they, you know, you think about Lake Ocoee Inn, and it's only business up there on the lake. They got some pontoons, and some of the last timber they couldn't get to with the railroad. They took the pontoon bridge up there, and I remember Homer Henry telling me about building this pontoon in there one day and putting it in, and said I took a bulldozer across and didn't intend to make it. Wanted to get rid of the old bulldozer, but he made it just going straight up. And they went back with 12 by 12 timbers the next day, and I've seen a picture of three loads of logs on that bridge, and at one time, and that bridge eventually washed out, and it was given, I believe, to Mr. Ed Lowe, and he got a permit, and he built the original Lake Ocoee Inn out of that bridge.
My dad built that in the late 40s out of that bridge, and it's still there today.
Right.
That's amazing. See, that's stuff that nobody's written down. You know, we got to kind of preserve that. That's great.
They used to have some really good lunch up there.
When you're going back to
really good,
when Bertie May made those buttermilk pies.
There you go.
The Jack River story there. I couldn't quite figure it out because I kept seeing pictures in everybody's photo album of like young couples and stuff standing on the bridge at Jack River, and I kept thinking, how in the world did they all get up there? So that makes sense. That if you had family groups and church groups going up there every Sunday, that's why there's so many pictures around of people sitting on that bridge.
You talking about on the falls?
I guess.
Or the bridge at the state line? Probably the bridge.
Falls, I think. Well, up in the mountains.
The falls was there at Beach Bottoms. And then the bridge, there was Shabel's place.
That's it. That's the name they call the bridge.
The old mill was there. The El Aculce mill was there at the old dam there, joined the Shabel's property.
Do you remember was a lot of the mills still around when you guys were younger?
That one was still, I don't remember it being in operation, but it was still standing up until sometime in the 50s.
I don't guess we have any mills left in Polk. There's none left in Bradley County now. There's no.
The buildings.
There was some Morrisons when I was young, and Uncle Husky Birchfield ran one in Benton with a one-cylinder engine. There was a lot of grist mills.
The only ones I remember in the 40s was one-cylinder engines, and that's where we took our corn.
Right. Yeah, but that's gone now. The Prater Mill down in down
Prater Mill's
is
another
still
big one.
and of course the big one here in Bradley County was the Hooper Mill, which is gone now also. And
there was one over there at Harrison Pike.
But you have a huge mill here in Cleveland, a flour mill.
Oh yes.
And we'd really like to have some folks who worked there in the early days to come on and talk to us, but we haven't found anybody yet. Do y'all know somebody?
Not right
well,
off.
There was Velvo, and it's owned by a company out of Knoxville now.
ADM.
Yeah.
ADM is a major
Oh
company.
yes.
I can remember those 100-pound sacks of shorts and wheat bran that we used to get out of there.
Mm-hmm.
So actually Velvo flour, and that was I actually got some pictures of some of the old Velvo flour sacks. That, I don't have a real sack, but I have a picture. I guess picture's the next best thing, isn't it? Hey, you talk about the flood. How high did the water? The flood up in McCaysville and Copper Hill. I remember watching a picture of a refrigerator floating down
and one
or
of
a
those
cooler.
Coolers from behind a restaurant floating down there on the news. It showed it floating down.
But now it washed the road out at number 2, didn't it?
I think there was a section at number 2 that it washed out. You talk about that. Let's go back just a little bit further.
Okay.
Back about 1929 or 30 in that vicinity, they started to build the road on to Copper Hill. We talked about how Caney Creek was an isolated area, and how Birchfield was there in that area when they blasted the rock, which it's very rocky there, and they put rock into the powerhouse and other places, and I said, "What'd you do then, Uncle Hal?" And he looked at me like I was crazy, and he said, "Well, we went to picking up rock. So what would you do today, But that nearly flooded the powerhouse out at number 2. And then in 1973, we had a big flood. Nothing to compare with 1990, but I could tell some things about that. But 1990 was the huge 1,000-year flood. And how high did the water get, Ron? Well, it got over the Cloud Branch, but just before you get to the zip lines at Parksville. And there at the Ocoee River Bridge, I can remember going down there about midnight, and it was probably within a foot or foot and a half of the 64 highway there, covering the bottoms. You could have went in a boat if you could have stood the current all the way on up to below Ben Milan's tire warehouse. So it was huge. But there's a cabin up there Stanley Elrod had just up on some little old telephone poles, and all it done was scooted off of it and down into some trees. So I like to think about the things that we could do ourselves and not worry about those things so much.
I remember Richard Berger owned a house, if you turn off there, and I think it got some pianos and organs out of his house, which water got up pretty high in there. So it's pretty amazing that
Arnold's here online, Ron, saying that he helped to report on the damage up at Copper Hill in the 90 flood, and he said water in the buildings there was almost up to the ceiling in the store buildings downtown.
Yeah, the day it stopped raining, I jumped in a plane right quick and went up there and shot some aerial footage of that. And it was, like you said, there was propane tanks and refrigerators and everything floating down through Copper Hill.
It was crazy.
So now at the number 1 there, I guess water just coming across the top, uncontrolled?
Uncontrollable. It was washing, eroding the base of that Sugarloaf Mountain out there. It was a sight to see. But on up the river, I'm not like John. I didn't get to see it, but I know it did wash a section of 64 out there
Right.
So, Joe, there when all this flooding's going on, what did it look like at the dam? What was actually going on at the dam?
I got some footage of that I can
Well,
show you.
Okay. But I mean, tremendous amount of water coming over the top of the dam.
Oh yeah, and like I said, the water was as I recall, it was almost splashing up on the steel if not splashing up on the steel on that old railroad bridge.
Wow.
And you talk about those bridges, it makes me think of the Caney Creek landings. We went back to when they built Caney Creek. They had 2 landings, which you can still see.
The wharf, so
amazingly.
there, yeah.
In the wintertime, when the water's down, you see that wood cribbed in. Well, they used that same type structure to build the end of the island. And my theory is that the old railroad bridge, I know the old bridge was original wooden structure was cribbed in rock with wood, and that wood being underwater, it preserved it. And the stick dam at where the whitewater rafting put in is a great example of it. And
they didn't concrete it until the 80s, didn't
they?
No,
and they didn't really intend to concrete it. They but they did.
What were they trying to do?
Well, they were just trying to determine the best way. Boots Rogers was over the carpenter crew, and he told them, said they could concrete it or crib it in with wood, and they said, well, what about just putting big rock in there? And they tried putting some big rock, I think, and of course that didn't work. And then they came along with the Olympics, and they were going to put big rock in there, but they finally decided, after some of us reminded them that they were going to concrete some of those things in the channel of the Olympic course, and had they not concreted it, we might not have had the Olympics because of the force. There was a book written by the Tennessee Power Company that was called The Power of Water. And it really is fundamental, and it was written at the time, I think, of the building of Number 1.
It was prior to Number 1, because some of the things that's in that book never came to be.
Right.
If I'm reading it right. Arnold's saying here that he thinks he also remembers them having to airlift the personnel out of Dam Number 2 during that flood of 90.
I think it actually the water did get into that.
Powerhouse.
Talking about the powerhouse number 2, do you remember when it blew up?
I do.
Tell me what you remember about that.
I don't remember even what year it was.
50
something.
54 maybe?
I was fairly young, so I was probably about 12, 13 years old. But I remember us driving past there as soon as the road was open, and the whole side of that building was gone. Just and brick up on the top of those bluffs on the other side of the road.
And someone was injured there, but no one was killed, I don't think.
The steel beams that build the building are still bent in there. You can see where the explosion actually bent and that's still today.
Was that not caused by a governor letting the generator run away?
Yeah.
They'd left a new guy there, I understand.
Yeah, there's some pretty good pictures of the whole side of the building just like you say, just gone. And I guess we're very lucky there wasn't more people on the screen now. If you've got on the internet now, this was the tree cutters pictures of them up there, and
there's McKissicks and Kings and Reimers in that picture, I believe.
And basically, you can see there's some young people in there too, and different age people, and say most of the pictures they had their tools. If they were diggers, they had picks with them, and if they were chopping trees, they had to. So they were proud of their craft or whatever they were using there.
Joe and I figured out that we're probably related. I guess you and I are too, Debbie. So because the family tree over there is kind of like a kudzu patch.
Well, Deb said you only walked as far as when you was younger, and these older days you only walked as far as the next girl was.
Well, I had an old fella. I said one time, I just don't understand why would anybody marry their first cousin. He said, Lord, after you plowed behind that mule all day, you only wanted to ride it to the next farm to go courting, and that's where she was. And that just cracked me up. But it's just a history that I think around here we just take it for granted.
Yes.
What a big, marvelous story it is, and we just take it for granted. But what people need to realize, too, is that gorge up there was much more narrow, and after they got the dam completed, they took off that whole mountainside that had that big hotel sitting or the guest house sitting
They've
up on
taken a
top
lot
of
of it off, yeah.
And you'll see pictures. There's a guest house up on each knoll there.
And I've said for many years when we've talked about building building the road, I think it's Corridor J. I think is the
K.
right, K. I knew one letter going across there, and we've
guess another one.
six or seven governors, 50 years, and we've talked about building that road over there. One day that mountain's going to let go, and there'll be a new lake, and we'll have to sell Copper Hill to somebody else if we're not careful, because that last slide that we had a couple of years ago wasn't a big slide, pretty big for that area, but in reality, of course, they went around there where that real sharp curve is, where the rock hung out. Monday Bluff. Yeah, that was one I said, well, that one's going to turn loose one of these days.
Joe, do they have the mess from this past week cleaned up now?
I'm not sure.
Or back to one, or is it
but
still
it's
a lane?
it's definitely a need for a good road for commerce, for economic reasons, for safety, and
We
yet
need a
to
better
maintain
road.
the area for the whitewater rafting. And then, Ron, there's another side of the history of that whole region there that's more recent that we need to appreciate, and that is the sacrifice of a whole lot of TVA workers that have truly worked hard in maintaining the power generation there. It wasn't anything for me to call some of them in the middle of the night to see, what the flow was going to be. Now then, it's an automated system, but they truly worked hard, many hours, just to keep us with electricity, and then the flume line and the maintenance, and today they fly directly over those power lines for the helicopters to keep the vegetation down from those big transmission lines. I've heard some of them talk about going in those tunnels. We don't think about those tunnels and what it would be like to go through miles of those tunnels.
Mm-hmm.
We need to have a celebration of what our heritage is here because of the hydroelectric power. I mean, we've got a lot of people that have worked in more recent times, and they appreciate these facts, Debbie. That's been put together in the documentary that your son done. But there needs to be a celebration of this. And
Volunteer energy too.
Right.
We had a lady come on here.
Her dad was one of the founders of Volunteer Electric coming on, and she talked about that starting up, which was a great story.
I mean, she was just a small child, and they were coming to her house. People were flying in to Meigs County. I mean, we're flying in somewhere and coming to Meigs County. I mean, like people from the White House kind of people, and talking about starting the power in this area, and it was a fascinating story.
Sometimes we say that government's no good, but the Rural Electrical Act, REA, is what got us rural electricity.
You talked about, Ron, earlier the fact that there's people right in Bradley County and in Polk County that did not have power until up in the 50s, and I think in some cases even later. The process was that it went to the big cities.
That's right.
And then
if it happened to pass by us, we were lucky.
Had we not had the rural electrification process and all the many hours, some of them come out all hours of the night, and when the wind blows up, had we not had that power distribution system and have it today, we still wouldn't have the power. So all of those folks are involved in it, and we're all involved in it.
And back just a few years ago, if the power went off for a little while, we didn't think anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
But now the cash registers don't work. Nothing works. If the power goes off, when the computers shut down, we shut down. And I think that should make us really appreciate the power. But they said now people are calling. It's been off 4 minutes.
my dad, when he got back from Korea, went to work for Volunteer Electric, and he was on the pole crew putting in power poles, and they didn't have those trucks back then. It was all by hand. Right. My dad was 5'6", 5'7", had arms like Popeyes from digging post holes or the power pole hole. But he worked a lot in Polk County building power to areas that had never had powers in the 52, 53 area. So this is early on that, still the 50s there. TVA, I don't know what, the flooding, the poverty in this area. And so, I get a little concerned sometimes when they say, well, let's just sell TVA. I don't know if they sold TVA today, would we still have the Ocoee dam system? I don't know. I mean, it's awful cheap electricity. It's already there. Something else I heard is, and you've heard, we've done so much about it, that they can actually start a lot of the dams from Ocoee number 2 because of the way they generate power there.
Ocoee number 1, I think, was originally that way because they had the capability. I talked with one of the former superintendents, and he could much better explain, but I think they could start the power production system somehow there. It takes more than just the generators. It takes something to start it.
We read something that involved Powerhouse number 2. Now, it may be true also for Powerhouse number 1, but it said that it has the capabilities to restart back up itself, and it would be responsible for starting up the other power plants that have gone down that can't restart themselves. Right. And they said some people think that it's antiquated. It's not antiquated. It's just very well done.
Well,
but that's how they made it originally, so it could start itself back up. I don't understand how that works.
It's a unique system that electricity is generated 3 times by the same drop of water. Right. I mean, it comes 3 times down that river, and it's over and over. And
it's 4 times. It may be the Ocoee, but it's the Toccoa in Georgia.
Right. Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah. Right. And there's a dam up there too. What's the name of it?
Blue Ridge.
Blue Ridge. Yes.
And if you just to get started, if you want to get started getting the feel, you kind of get frustrated in life and want some relaxation on the weekend, you can come out and get right out in that area where the corn's grown and be right up there and go up to the gazebo at Parksville and see some of these pictures, the actual pictures of what we're talking about, and one of the turbines. But you can come up there at the corn maze and relax and have a good time and see that it is the river of life.
Now, tell us how you get to your corn maze before we get off
corn maze, all you got to do is cross the Ocoee River, and 3 miles east of Ocoee, and you're there.
Turn left, right?
Turn left. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Yeah.
Well, now, and so your opening date is the 21st.
21st of September.
What times?
11 o'clock.
11 o'clock in the morning, and it's $5 a person that day.
On that day, right.
That would be a great time for people to bring a good-sized group up there, I would think.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Do they need to call ahead, or can they just show up?
The only reason that we would need a group to register with us would be if they wanted to have an assembly point somewhere that was just to themselves. So
okay.
So outside of that, we just want them to come on and have fun.
So you start on September 21st, and how long will it operate?
We'll run through the last of October every weekend, Friday afternoons, Saturdays, and Sunday afternoon, and then we operate other times during the week. Anytime a group, school group, or other group wants private appointment, we'll arrange that, be it private or be several groups at that time. So it's all that entire time on up to through October 31st.
And did the weather cooperate with you last year? Did you have good weather?
You're talking about this summer?
No, last year for the corn maze.
Last year was a good summer. Great. I mean, fall. It was great fall.
So how many people did you have come through, just approximately?
At least 6,000 customers.
Was that your biggest year?
That was
a good year.
Yeah, actually a good bit over 6. I mean, but that was, the paying customers, and sometimes we had some others. So, that were.
We had a lot of rain this year. I know that, and I heard that we only was over 90 degrees only like 6 times all summer. What did that do to your crops?
Well, the rain,
water's good, but you need a little heat too.
The rain was more significant than anything. We planted the corn maze at 4 different times, but it's pretty uniform and it's pretty neat. And one thing that we're planning that's going to be so unique this time is that the Lee University, one of their choirs, is coming up on October the 13th, or a rain date of October the 20th on a Sunday evening, and have just a special youth rally or whole church rally, and we're hoping that's a big event.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
What were some of the big churches along up through there, or the country churches that you guys attended?
Oh my goodness!
There's a
lot
church
of,
on
there's,
every
there's,
farm
there's a
up
lot
there.
Of churches.
Yes.
Well, Cookson Creek,
Almost
I always
one for
love to
every
go.
family.
Yeah.
I always love to go to Cookson Creek because it's kind of
Right.
like Lost in Time.
That-
It's still
it is.
you
And-
go up there and you turn off at Cherokee Corners and follow that around, and you'll see the sign for Cookson Creek just past the old Cloud House that Ron and I owned for about 13 minutes one time, and we bought it at the auction. Then the farm sold it as a whole, but you go over to Cookson Creek and there's a little branch there beside it, and it's still the little white frame church, and it's just a beautiful place there, and they keep it up very well.
I remember us taking my grandparents up there almost every Sunday afternoon, especially for homecoming, because their parents are buried there.
Yeah, they put the cemetery up on the highest knob.
Right.
And I'm sure that was for a couple different reasons, because that was hard to plow and it was closer to the Lord and it didn't get flooded. So there you go. But now that little cemetery is very well maintained up there.
It's a great place for a sunrise service. You
I
start
imagine
talking about
so.
Cookson Creek, it brings so many emotions to me because we used to farm or go up there a lot and farm a lot of that area, and that's you talk about the Cloud House. That's actually the old Doc Copeland house. Originally a pre-Civil War house, and there were a lot of communities in Polk County, and I kind of hesitate to say this, but there was a post office right across the road from it that was called Fetcherton, but there were so many other post offices that don't exist, or communities like Probst was up on the Hiawassee River nobody knows about. There's just a whole lot of history to
We're just
to Polk
happy we
County,
still
Bradley
have post offices at the rate they're going here.
Right, right.
They're closing down everywhere. Well, guys, we a few more minutes here. The tell me, and I've been told this before, but I still don't know or how to get there. The Ocoee River and the Hiawassee River come together somewhere.
On my son-in-law's farm.
I don't know where in the devil that is. I mean, I've never been to where they come to that point together.
You go to Benton, to the traffic light if you're going north, take a left, and go out on Dentville Road. And as you cross the river there, you'll be crossing the Hiawassee. Look to the left, and right there's where the Ocoee comes in.
Okay.
And
I maybe have been by there, just didn't realize what I was seeing.
There's
a pretty big
campground.
bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a campground there
Right.
called Two Rivers Campground.
Two Rivers Campground, yeah.
Mhm.
And if you
People
want-
have told me that before, and I says, where in the devil is this at?
He
If you
wants
wanna
to put
see
it somewhere
from the other
else.
side, you're coming up. I believe they call it the Upper River Road there by the Calfies and Ronald Davis's
Oh, yeah.
farm.
Right.
You get up there to that last bend whenever you start to turn to Benton Station. If you're
Mhm.
going east, you look way back over in there to the left, and you can't really see it, but that far corner is very close.
Right.
I think there's some distance between it, but that's very close to the
Now, how big is
convergence.
both the rivers at that point? I mean, are they wide or how big
Quite
is
a
it?
bit.
Pretty wide,
Yeah.
pretty wide. A lot of force to that water meeting there.
We like it because we can float the Hiawassee or the Ocoee and get out right there on the farm.
Go get the house either way, right? That's good. I've braved the Hiawassee several times. I've never
Dragged. He's dragged.
I haven't done the Ocoee. You know,
Well, not only the Ocoee and the Whitewater section now, the normal Whitewater, but then they have the Olympic upper part,
right?
And then they do tubing on the lower part,
right?
And then they do snorkeling on the Conasauga, and they do all kinds of things on the Hiawassee. So we've got great water.
There's
now.
I've been into Conasauga.
I've been there, yeah.
I grew up in my grandparents in Tinga, and we went up to the Gin Slough and Marsh Cars.
Oh, yeah.
And
Busted Rock.
I never went through Busted Rock. Oh, all my cousins and all the other people, they went through. No, I'm not going through that rock underneath there. I'd get stuck.
There's a program that they do for teachers that they take them down on Conasauga and teach them, I don't know, about looking for water animals and stuff. Something for the classroom. It always sounds like something
And I
really
didn't-
fun, but that is some really cold water.
I have not jumped off the Easley Ford Bridge either.
No, but I've
I've
seen
been-
it.
You don't need to either.
No.
Sheriff Davis might catch you.
Well, now, Deb,
He
you
lives right
were
there.
baptized there. Yes, yeah, sure.
I was
On the
too.
south side of the bridge
And
there.
my grandfather, some of the barns on the property there, he built or
The one closest
or when
to
he
Bill's
moved
house.
over there, and so yeah.
Well, when they were doing the flooding for Chickamauga Dam, his grandpa went in a flatbed
T-model truck or something up there, and it took like 13 trips to bring all the wood back, and then he reassembled the barn there beside what's now Sheriff Davis's house.
Yeah.
Ron, I just want to thank y'all too for inviting us over today. This is I've enjoyed the program, and I really enjoy the history that Joe brings. All his acquaintances and family there.
Just great information.
I just think it means so much more that we can all come together and talk about this, because one mind just thinks of a few things, and we get to discussing this and we get excited, but there's a lot more people out there.
And this brings home the same point that I tell people a lot of times, is that I can read about it in a book, but when somebody tells me something they've seen themselves or stuff that's not in the books, that's much more interesting, I just really enjoy it.
So we got a call here. Good morning. You're live on Old Town Cleveland.
Yes, could I let you know that we have a dog missing?
Okay, honey, tell us about your dog.
It's missing in the Sloan Gap Road in Ocoee area.
Uh-huh. What's it look like?
Reward. It's black and white.
Okay, give us a phone number, so that somebody can call you. You're live on the air, but give us the phone number if you want somebody to call you if they find the dog.
Okay, it's 716-1704.
Okay.
And what does the dog look like?
It's a black and white boxer. It's almost a year old.
Oh.
It's been missing for about a week and a half.
Uh-oh. Did it just get away from you? You don't know?
I guess so.
Okay.
You're actually close to where the train used to run from Parksville to Ocoee. That dog may be in that. It's got to be in that area there, because that's about where you live.
Yeah, around Sloan Gap.
All right, hon. Well, I hope you find your dog.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
It's like having a missing child when you got a dog that's run off.
Well, Johnny, got any last comments here?
No, just really enjoyed the program and the
we'll
history.
Have you back.
I didn't realize what value history had until I got old enough to realize the people that knew were getting gone in a hurry.
Right.
Good morning. You're live on Old Town Cleveland.
Yeah, Ron, this is Joe.
Hey, Joe.
Hey, Joe. What's up? How'd your eye surgery go, buddy?
I tell you what, Tuesday was rough. That night was rough for me.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was dying. I couldn't even open my eyes.
Huh. Better now?
Yeah.
Good. Good. What's up?
Talking a while ago about Polk County not having no electricity.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember living up there when there wasn't no electricity.
Yeah.
What was that in the
early 50s?
Early 50s. Yep. I believe that was true of a lot of places up there in the early 50s.
Yeah, there wasn't no such thing as we seen by quarter oil lamps. That's what we had.
And I bet you didn't have any cell phones or internet.
No. Kind of wish we didn't have them today.
You know what? I was about to say the same thing, Joe.
I'll let you know. I can remember that.
All righty, Joe. Glad your eyes are doing better, buddy. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Joe, you got any final words there?
It's been great to come and to visit with y'all and to share with others, and we look forward to comments.
Well, see, people don't want us to go now.
And
We get
the
ready to
people
go.
coming to the maze, right?
We definitely want them.
Good morning. You're live on Old Town Cleveland.
Hey, Ron, could I speak to Debbie off the line?
Sure can.
Okay.
Here you go, Deb. Well, folks, tell us when the corn maze is open again.
September the 21st.
Right.
Through October the 31st.
Go out 64, go into Polk County, go across Ocoee River, turn left.
You're there.
You're
500
there.
feet across
Yeah.
the end of the bridge.
Yeah. Now, folks, we always try to tell people is that how important it is for you to go get those old pictures from out from under the bed, out of the closet, out of the drawers, out of that shoebox. Get someone in your family to sit down and start putting on a label and putting on the back of the picture who those people are, and talking to your family members and recording them. You can record them on your cell phone now, but get an old cassette player or a video camera and record these people. And we're not going to go home today. Good morning. You're live on Old Town Cleveland.
Hey, Ron, I got cut off.
Okay.
Lost me.
Let's see here if we can get her again here. There you go. The and it's important that you share these stories with people too, because we'll always know what happened at Pearl Harbor, but we may not know what happened in your family, down your street, in your neighborhood, the little store you run. You'll be surprised what a picture of your grandfather may spark. The ender says, well, I did business with him, or I happen to be related to him also. So it's sharing the history is very, very important. And the only way we can do it is if you do it yourself. So your homework is this weekend, talk to someone in your family and write down some stories. We'll see you next week here on Old Town Cleveland, folks.
I'm Chase Carroll. Here's a look at your weather forecast. Partly sunny skies today with highs in the upper 80s. A slight chance for an afternoon shower, low overnight in the mid-60s. Partly sunny Sunday with highs near 90 and a 20% chance of an afternoon shower. That's a look at your weather forecast on Whoop FM.
Come celebrate our newest Mermaid Mattress store downtown on North Market Street with factory direct prices and up to 5 years interest-free financing at all Mermaid Mattress locations.
Join Steve Hickson every Wednesday morning at 7:30 for Backfire with guest hosts John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey, right here on 99.9 Whoop FM.
She lives her life in honky-tonks and crowded backstreet bars. A world of make-believe that knows no sun or moon or stars. Just the glitter of the great white